Hi everybody, this is Mike with Kids and Dragons. I have a little hypo dunner here. Today I'm going to make a couple videos probably. I think it's probably going to be 2 videos. And it's because I get asked a lot about breeding bearded dragons. And so the first video, and the reason I'm going to break it up is because I don't want it to be one super huge long video that's unwatchable because it's just way too long. So I'm gonna first talk about everything you need to know before you ever breed dragons, before you ever put a pair together, and then I will make a second video about some breeding tips, just things we've learned over the years from breeding bearded dragons. But please do not skip this first video. It's the cornerstone. You need a solid foundation before you do anything in life, and I think that's what the first video is going to go over. Might be boring in parts, might not be as interesting, but it's going to be a very important foundation to becoming a breeder if that's what you want to do. So I'm going to start off by just saying that breeding bearded dragons is a lot of fun. It's an awesome hobby. I've met awesome people. I love working with the animals, and I do this for a living. So it is possible. It is possible to make a living breeding bearded dragons, but you have to do it the right way. So to start, you need to have a general understanding of the species. You need to know what a bearded dragon is and what they do, more than just like seeing a picture of one or keep kind of hearing about them. And just, I can't tell you how many people, it's like they get a baby and all of a sudden before they've ever maybe before they even received the baby, they're like, I want to be a breeder, I want to breed bearded dragons. And I think that's awesome, but you don't really know anything about them or like what their care is like, everything that goes into them. So it's important to know the species, to know the bearded dragon before you become a breeder. So I would suggest owning multiple bearded dragons for probably a couple of years at least before you should decide I'm definitely going to breed bearded dragons. So I think the best thing you can do is to start slow. I know it's exciting. I've been there. I know it's like you want to quickly do it as fast as you can. I completely understand, but I think you need to kind of take a step back and just remind yourself that the best way to do it is slow and easy. And you, in the future, you will be extremely grateful that you went about it a slow way, because the reason that so many people get into breeding and then quickly out, and there's a lot of people that do that. It happens since I have been doing it, I've seen it. And the reason that is because they're exciting, they're fun, so people buy a lot. They don't realize what it means to take care of a bearded dragon and to be a breeder, and then they quickly get out, just as quick as they started. So I would recommend probably a couple of years of get several babies, grow them out, watch them, take care of them, learn about them. There's a lot to learn. I've been keeping bearded dragons for a long time, and I still feel like I learn new stuff about them all the time. We're constantly changing things and tweaking things and providing better care for them. So it's a constant learning that's happening. So another good reason to grow your animals out is because before you breed is because it will give you the proper experience that you need to understand dragons, how they can get sick, what you might need to treat a dragon with when it gets sick, how to take care of an animal to prevent sickness, things like that. And when you breed dragons and you sell them to a customer, you're going to be the expert whenever the bearded dragon has an issue. They're a living thing. It can be 100% healthy, perfect animal in your care, and then get sick when it gets there. It just happens because they're living. They're a living animal. And so you need to know general care and the bearded dragon enough to be able to help somebody through any potential problems that could arise. If a customer comes to you and asks you what they can do to get the dragon more interested in greens because it's not interested at all in them, you need to be able to offer some tips and some helpful information so that they know what to do with their animals. And if you just buy a couple adult dragons, breed them, sell the babies, somehow you're not going to have the slightest clue as to help somebody with a problem when it happens, and it inevitably will happen because they're live animals. It's also very important to have goals in mind when you're doing your pre-planning. So you would need to know what pairs not to do, like I talked about, but also like what are you trying to do? And this is not really anything that anybody can help you with besides it's just why do you want to do this? You know, what are you trying to do? What's your goal? I think it's good to have goals because you're somewhere that you're aiming at, and you can strive for something and you can be the best at what you're trying to do, and I think you can only do that if you have a goal. Like if you want to produce solid, healthy yellow animals, then you buy yellow babies or whatever to achieve your goal. So that's another good thing to have in mind. You've bought 3 or 4 babies, 5 or 6 or 7, and you've grown them out, and you've had them for a year and a half, 2 years, and you are still like, man, I loved every part of that. No, not really, but I want to be a breeder. I still want to do it. I really loved everything about it. I love the species. I want to do it. I would suggest my main point here is going to be slow and easy. It's painful, but slow and easy. So when you actually do a pair, I would suggest starting with 1 or 2 pairs and just see how it goes, because it is so different. It doesn't scale like how you think it would, even if you've raised 3 or 4 babies. There's nothing like having 15 to 20 hungry mouths to feed in one clutch. And so it's a lot. So I would suggest doing 1 or 2 pairs. Your female may lay multiple clutches. You don't have to incubate every clutch. You can just do enough so you're getting a taste so that you can see what it's like. So yeah, once again, you've raised your babies and you decided, I definitely want to do this. I want to breed the bearded dragons. So the next thing I would do is I would do a lot of research. You need to be very proactive before you ever put a male and a female together. It's not something you would want to do and then be like, okay, I've bred the dragons, now what do you should know like what the next step is. So before you ever pair them, I would go over do as much research as you can about them. When I say do your research, I just mean to know your morphs with the bearded dragons and how they work. It took me I'm not the brightest bulb. It took me a while to figure out the difference between recessive genes and codom genes. But once you have an understanding of those basic genetics and how they work, it's easy. And bearded dragons, there's like 8 morphs. We're not like ball pythons where there's just like hundreds, you know. It's easy. And so there's rules that you need to know, like no trans to trans, no 0 to 0, no wit to wit. You don't want to do those visual pairings. And so that is what I mean when I say do your research, know the species, and understand the different genetics and how they work together. Find out everything you're going to need for the babies that you're going to potentially have. all of the extra care that's going to need to be put into mom from producing eggs. So one thing you're going to need is an incubator. Many people come to me and their dragon just had eggs and they don't have an incubator. They've never done any research, anything like that. So that's a big one. You need to get an incubator and you need to get it set up, and because the temperature fluctuates and eggs may not survive. It's just not good to not have one ready to go for your eggs when you have eggs. So get an incubator, get it set up beforehand. I would say if you're planning on breeding, you need to get one of those and get it set up. The next thing is that you're going to want to make sure mom has an extra supply of bugs. Before you start breeding, you need to make sure you can give her everything she needs. A female can lay 15 to 25 or more eggs in a single clutch, and that's a lot of eggs, and that takes a lot out of her body. Her body uses a lot of calcium, so we really up our female's bug intake, and that's a big cost. You, besides feeding her extra, giving her extra supplements, liquid calcium is a great supplement to have on hand to give to your females that are producing eggs. So I would say the next thing you need to know is you need to be prepared for the eggs. And so that starts with your female once again. You're going to need to know what she's going to do when she's ready to lay her eggs. You'll have to have a lay bin set up, which is, it's simple. It's a tub. You can buy like a tote or something like that from Walmart. You can use clay sand, topsoil, and the trick is to make it just wet enough so that it can hold a hole. Like if you were to dig a hole out with your hand, it wouldn't fall in. But not too wet that it's like soaking wet at the bottom of the sand, because then you can have other problems. So that's something you would need to know if your female is developing eggs. And also the signs that she's ready to go in that lay bin. So you need an incubator, a lay bin set up that's ready, because when you pair dragons, things happen way quicker than you would imagine. So that's why it's good to be proactive, and I think that's why so many people come to me asking about things that they should already be set up for, because things just happen so quickly when you breed the dragons successfully. So a lay bin needs to be set up so that she can lay her eggs. Let me think, what else? And then after she lays her eggs, that care is very important as well. She'll need lots of food. Again, might even be more so than before eggs, because her body is going to need to bounce back from laying all those eggs and potentially prepare for another clutch. So again, with the supplements and extra food. So those are some of the things you'll need before you ever pair your dragons up. Another big thing to think about before you ever pair dragons up is the cost. It's very expensive. Bearded dragons eat a lot of food. They can eat a lot of food, and so you need to think about all your costs for breeding. And I've basically broken them down into housing, feeding, and cleaning. So you'll need housing for all of the babies that you produce. That's why it's good to know how many you're going to produce, and to keep it, basically what I'm saying is don't hatch every single clutch that you produce your first time, or don't go pairing 6 dragons together for your first year, because you might think you have enough space, but like I said before, it's not the same as raising 5 or 6 babies. So when you hatch out your first clutch, they probably all would be fine in one cage. And I mean, I'm talking a 40-gallon cage. We put our babies right out of the incubator in 40-gallon size cages. And a lot of people ask about caging and size and stuff like that. And a 40-gallon is a perfect size for a newborn dragon. I really don't like going any smaller than that because you run into problems with the temperature gradient, but that's a different topic. My point is, don't put an entire clutch in like a 10-gallon aquarium or even a 20. Like you'll have problems right out the gate. So I mean, a 40-gallon cage is a pretty good sized cage, and you'll be able to house a clutch in there for. Every clutch is different. Some grow quicker, some grow a little bit slower. But I would say 2 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks is probably pushing it. You're probably looking more around 2 weeks before you would need to basically half the babies. So what once fit in one 40-gallon cage now needs to be split up into 2 40-gallon cages. And as those babies grow another 2 weeks, you have to split them again. So it doesn't stop. And then when you start trying to sell your babies, if you can't sell them immediately, which it can be hard to do, especially if you aren't established or you don't have a good reputation. Not that you don't have a good reputation, but you don't really have a reputation at all. It can be hard to sell bearded dragons at first when you're very first starting out. So that's why it's good to plan in advance, because you need a lot of space. So if your babies don't sell quickly or as quick as you would like, you're not in a frantic worry about having enough space. You've got enough space because you did your homework and you made sure you could only hatch out what you can properly house. So the biggest cost to consider with baby dragons is feeding. Pretty much right away they are little feeding machines. Appropriately sized bugs, that's the key. So I tell everybody this, and this would be another good topic for another video, but I think a good average is 5 to 15 insects per day per dragon. So that's how many bugs you need to be able to feed every single day. So it's very easy math. You just you follow that, you scale that up to however many babies you plan on hatching out. That's how many bugs you're gonna need to have on hand all the time. So that's another thing about the dragons is they eat every single day, multiple times a day. So that's a big one that you have to plan for, is feeding. It's probably the biggest expense when it comes to dragons. Another expense to consider is cleaning the cages. So an animal that fly won't stop. An animal that eats that much is going to poop a lot. So they need to be cleaned pretty frequently. So a cleaning solution, paper towels, rags, whatever you plan on cleaning with, you need to consider that part of your cost, part of your breeding cost. Once you have babies that are ready to be sold, and this is going to vary from breeder to breeder, I would say at a bare minimum, the dragon needs to be about 10 grams. I've purchased plenty of dragons this size, and I've sold dragons this size. They do very well. The past couple years, we've actually waited until they're closer to this size, just threw this one on the scale, and it's about 30 grams. What I would say 20 to 30 grams is about the size that we most on average sell our dragons. I would compare a bearded dragon at 10 grams to like a 6-week-old puppy. Breeders sell them at that age and they can do well, but I think we like to wait more until like a 12-week-old puppy, which would be around a 20 or 30 gram dragon. They just do so much better when they go to a new home when they're this size and age. You get a lot of people who will have, when they're smaller, like 10 grams, I get a lot more frequently like the dragon's not eating, or it's stressed out, or it's doing this or that, and those things kind of disappear the bigger the dragon is. I would say I almost never hear the dragon isn't eating or things like that. It happens, but I almost never hear it whenever the dragon is 20 or 30 gram minimum. So that's the reason we like to wait a little bit longer. So don't plan on selling the babies right away or right out of the egg or anything like that. They really need to get some size to them, which is, this all ties together, and that's why it's so important to do your research and homework and be prepared before the thing happens. That way you're ready. That way you have no problem sitting on your bearded dragons if they're taking a while to sell, which they often can. It's important to have a good plan on how you're going to be selling the babies. There's several avenues. You could sell online. You can sell at a reptile show. You could sell to pet stores that are local to you. The way we started was we did a couple of pairs, and I had no idea there was this market of bearded dragons online, and there was all these colors and different morphs, and we were selling to pet shops, and it was crazy. It was like every single time we had babies, pet stores wanted them. And so after that, it was like we purchased more high-end animals and learned a lot about this whole online market, and that's primarily how we sell now. But so it's good to have a solid plan in line once again before you start breeding, so that way you're ready to do whatever you need to do so that you can sell your animals, and you're also not stressed out and worried if they don't sell immediately. Finally, I would just like to say that it's important to keep in mind that nothing good comes from cutting corners or taking shortcuts or trying to do things the fast or quick way. It's not a good idea to say you're going to cut costs by like feeding your dragons the cheapest food you can find or anything like that. And to that point, I'm not saying that crickets or mealworms, which are your most cost-effective food, they're not bad at all. I'm more so talking about like if there's pellets out there or something that's not a live feeder. You can't go wrong with a live feeder that you can gut load with anything the dragon could potentially need. So don't cut corners. Feed your dragons well. Give them plenty of cage space. Feed your baby dragons well. Something that has always resonated with me is that if you take care of your animals, they will take care of you. So don't buy pellets and think that you're going to be able to feed your dragon that and make a bunch of money on the babies. You reap what you sow. You really do. Like if you took care of your adults that way, they probably wouldn't produce any eggs, or you would have a plethora of other problems. So I think slow and easy is the theme here, and that is the way to go if you think that you would like to breed bearded dragons.